upon, okay? But we start here because where else will we get a question? I know that you think, well, it will pop in your head. Nothing pops in your head. You're reading something. You may be reading a newspaper. You may be reading a report somewhere. You may be having a conversation with someone. That's where it popped in your frickin' head, okay? That's what a literature review is, those kinds of things. But we want to formalize that literature. We're going to formalize it insofar as we want to make you ask, what is it that scholars are saying, not the general public, okay? Now, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to get a topic. Cyber war. Gay rights. That's two, one domestic and one international. Leave that as it is. But you have a topic. Now, what are you going to do? You're going to go to the library and you're going to start reading about what has been asked about the topic. Now, if your topic is huge and it uses some words like success, you're going to have a damn hard time, because success is one of the most meaningless words in the English language. It's about as meaningful as the word marriage in the current era, yeah? Or commitment, yeah? Or love. They are absolutely useless terms, okay? Except for, well, in the immediate, okay? Success is the same thing. It's really hard to define it. It takes a lot of effort to define it. That's why in marriage and love takes a lot of effort to define and a lot of effort to make work. You just don't throw the words out there. It's the same thing with success. Those are not the questions you want to ask. It takes way too much of your effort. So you want to ask concrete questions about a topic. Where are you going to go? To the literature. What are the concrete questions that scholars are asking about the topic? Now what you're going to find is you're going to have a choice in terms of going to non-scholarly articles, newspaper stuff, yeah, or scholarly articles or books. Scholarly articles. Why? You have literature reviews. So it's going to talk about what it is that others said about the question they're raising. They're going to identify their question clearly enough for you. They're going to put it in historical perspective, or in some perspective, making an argument of why they should be asking this question, how it contributes to a current question. That's going to help you. Now, your problem will be is that you'll want to take that one literature review. Well, that's called plagiarism. And so what you have to do is you have to read the other pieces that are being cited, right? And then what you have to do is you have to come to a conclusion as to what it is you want to write about. And what should you write about? What they are not including in the debate. Or there is a debate, and which side of the debate you're going to be on. Make sense? So that's your goal here. You're trying to find a debate that you can either enter into with a new answer to the same question, right? Or you're going to enter in with an answer to a question that is still being debated. Now, still being debated is not something that was debated in the 70s that nobody talks about now, right? So you have to be cautious here. So you want to err in favor of a little bit more current debates. Now, some things that are going on in the 70s are still being debated, yes, but not all things, okay? They're not, okay? So, for instance, we don't really debate as much anymore about what causes a two-party system as opposed to a multi-party system. That's an old, dead, tired debate. Another one is almost as dead and tired, not quite as dead, but certainly dead. I don't know how you're either dead or not, but in whatever, we get degrees of dead, fuzzy dead. How fuzzily dead are you? You know? And here, the question becomes like, what institutional design is more favorable to democracy? Presidentialism or parliamentarism become the two big debates here. That's 1990s, you know? For most of you, you weren't even born, right, before the debate started. So you know it's old, correct? All right, so I get that. So, but take a look for its more current debates. Now, what are you looking for? Well, you're going to read the literature. If you read the literature on cyber war, you're going to find that there's kind of like three epochs there. Three generations of scholarship. And they don't kind of like, oh, this one was born, this one died, and the other one immediately was born after it. No, they overlap. They're messy. Some of what was going on earlier is still going on. But there's something that happened earlier. And the question, so what you're going to start with is a topic again, not a question. You're looking for a question. You're looking for the question based on what scholars have asked. So I'm going to a topic, cyber war. Okay? So I've got cyber war. I look at the literature and I find, first generation scholars are all about, well, what is it? Well, that's not really a research question because we're looking for causality. So what is not a good thing, but they had to start there because they weren't sure, like, do we include cyber war non-state aggression, like Anonymous? Or some kid in his skivvies downstairs hacking into the DOD? Is that cyber war? Or does it require state against state? Does it require that the target is a government target of the executive branch under the bureaucracy? Or does it require it as a state target, some state? Or could it be a financial district target? We don't know. So there was a debate about that. And the debate was generally resolved in favor of it had to be state against state, and it had to target state activities, not business, not non-state activities. All right? All right, so that's what they came up with as cyber war. Now those other things became cyber something else. Cyber attacks, right? But not cyber war. So they understood war in a more traditional sense that it required a state attacking another state. Yes? So, did it resolve itself? Not really, before the second issue emerged, and that was what countries, what states are more likely to engage in cyber warfare? Now that was imposed upon them by a reality called Russia. And the Russian Federation attacked Estonia, shortly thereafter Georgia, and then more recently Ukraine, using what we think to be fairly sophisticated cyber techniques, although the first attack wasn't that sophisticated. It's just denial of service, which means you overwhelm the servers with too much email. And they just flooded Estonia and shut down their servers. Their servers had to shut down, because that's what they do. They automatically shut down. If they don't, they will die. An unnatural death, okay? So they shut down. So it's denial of service attack. So this raised a whole bunch of issues. Who's likely to engage in it? So scholars started asking these questions. The scholars were asking these questions in the sense of case studies. They were just studying what Russia had done, or what it was thought that Russia had done. That research continues. We're looking at what China is thought to have done against the DOD and other US state targets. Yeah, more recently. All right, so we're also talking about what the United States or Israel's thought to have done with the virus against Iran from about 6-7 years ago. That took down their nuclear program, shut it down, because it shut down their computer systems. So we're having case studies. But a case study is a study of a single case, a single event. Not very helpful for you. Although it is helpful if you wanted to ask, well, maybe I go back to that question. I asked that question, and can I put it into this format? Well, maybe we can. Let's think about that, but not yet. Because there's a third generation that has mucked its way into all this, and we're still debating what cyber war is and cyber attacks, and people are disagreeing, and we're still worrying about who's more likely to do it, but we started to ask, who's vulnerable? What countries are the most vulnerable? Let's use that one, because that's the current debate. So the question is, how to explain the variation in vulnerability to cyber warfare? Yeah? That's the question. What's the dependent variable? How to explain the variation in the vulnerability to cyber warfare? What's the dependent variable? Vulnerability to cyber warfare. Okay? So, at some point we're going to have to ask that question, but I now have a question. Where did I get it? The literature. I read it in the literature. So now there is a section that's the first section of my paper, and what do we call that first section of the paper? What is the first section of the proposal called? Or a research paper? What is it? Research question. And I now have a what? I'm ready to start writing the... But I had to do what first? The literature review. Get it? So I'm now ready, I have a question. So that takes me to, okay, how to write that? Well, let's write this piece first. I got another issue here though, all right? Remember I told you we have to define cyber war? Okay. What am I gonna have to define in the question I'm asking? Vulnerability. Because that's my dependent variable. Where do you suppose I'm going to define it? In the research questions section. We'll get there, but you're starting to see where all this stuff's coming from. It's coming from this work. This right here. Okay? All right. Where might you get a definition?
The literature.
The literature. Should you quote it? No. You should do what? Paraphrase it, and then cite the source. And there, you may have to also define cyber war. Because remember, that is a debatable question as well. But certainly vulnerability, your dependent variable. And I think cyber war along with it, because we're not sure what that means. Okay? So we bring it out from the literature, and we'll define it. But now, the literature view. I have a question. Now what I'm looking for. Look up there. What am I looking for? What do I need to write this? What am I looking for in the literature?
Hypothesis.
Yes. How many? How many might there be? Hundreds. But I'm only asking you to give me 3. So let me go back to a point that I made at the beginning of the course that you will forget and you will angst over. I don't care if you learn a damn thing about cyber war or anything about politics. What am I worried about? You get this right. I don't care if you get all the hypotheses out of the literature, because I know there's more than 3, but I'm going to require you to what? Have. Now, how many sources do I want you to have? 20. You will have no fewer than 20 scholarly articles or books. I recommend articles because they are written in the same style as you need to find the literature review and the hypotheses, and they will talk in those terms, and the books will not. And I do not recommend any non-scholarly articles of any sort for any reason whatsoever, other than, it's a pretty good piece and I could use it, but it ain't going to help me with the literature review much. Except for maybe a hypothesis that you found.
So for all the 20 sources that we have,
Yep.
do they all have to fall into the 3 hypotheses we give?
Okay, you may be able to cite them in that definition, but you're going to cite them somewhere. But most of you are going to cite all 20 right in this section, under those 3 hypotheses. Now, what style will you use? You will use, if it's available, because it's supposed to come out this month, the 17th edition of the Chicago Manual Style. It is online. If the 17th is not there, you may use the 16th. It is supposed to be out, but things happen. 16th will work. You are to use the APA style, not MLA. You are to use it for the references and the in-text parenthetical citation format, which is, once again, no footnotes. Okay? So that's what you use. Now, if you've talked to anybody, they will tell you, I am the Wicked Witch of the North on this stuff. The format will be perfect. Okay? Now, why is that? Well, there's the kind of the practical reason, and then there's the practical reason. So the first practical reason is that you may find it hard to believe, but people actually read your references, and one of those people would be I. Why? Because you're saying stuff I haven't heard before, and I'd like to read it myself. So I go to the reference. I'm not checking your work, I'm using your work. You are communicating to me. That's what good scholarship should be about, and you're doing that. And I am taking advantage of your free labor. in that sense. So many of you will come up with really cool ideas, and I look at it. There's nothing more frustrating than poorly cited, poorly formatted stuff, and you're looking around because your eyeballs are trained to go exactly what you're looking for, and you can't find the volume where it is, you can't find the pages where they're supposed to be, the date's in the wrong place, there is no date, they got all capital letters, and I can just tell you, that's just frustrating for anybody that's working on your work, okay? And it leaves them with what image of you? You are sloppy, inattentive, and lazy, right? Not a good image, I assure you. Yes? Now that brings us directly to the second practical implication. All right, so all of you are going to be out in the job market within 1 to 3 years. Do you want your bosses to think this way of you? So the question is, when are you going to start demonstrating the kind of discipline that's necessary to it? I want you to do it now, so that you will do it then, because it'll be habit. Does that make sense? Now, I learned from my mistakes. I was sloppy, inattentive, and ill-disciplined. And so here I am at the university. Because nobody else will hire me. Of course, I jest, but the reality was, in my first year, in fact, in the first 3 months of my first job, the first thing I wrote came back with red all over the place. I had never seen anything like this in university. It was red everywhere. And my boss said, follow the frickin' style manual that we took the time to put together for you, or I'm firing you if I get another piece like this. Oh my gosh, that got my attention. I don't think that was a good first image, do you? I thought, whoops, can we have a reset button? Well, they don't have reset buttons at work. They have 1 strike and then 2 and you're out. That's the way it works. They don't give you 3, they give you 2. The first time they tell you, the second time they write you up. Once you're written up and it goes to paper, you are SOL. Start looking for another job. Does that make sense? So that's what happened to me, literally. All right? I want you to avoid that. So just learn from crappy professor. Here I am. Okay. All right. So they seem like unimportant things. The world you live in says it's important. So guess what? You don't get to decide. Now, when you become the boss or the king, you can change it. But this is the world you're going into. So deal with it, right? So they expect it to look the way it's supposed to look. Just like when you show up to work, like we said before, I think I said it here, you notice that everybody at a certain workplace dresses a certain way, right? And when they don't dress the way everyone else is dressed, something's weird, right? Hello? So style matters. Not just your personal style, but the style manual. So enough said on that. It's very important for you, and I want it to be important to you. And I can tell you, it does irritate me. It absolutely irritates the snot out of me. It didn't when I was your age, but it does now. So let's not go there. Okay, so you've got 20 references on a reference page. When you turn in the literature review, you will turn in the reference page. You may two-side, that is type on 2 sides of the paper, but all printed matter, to include the references, will be double-spaced. All, to include the references. I can't grade something that is single-spaced. And I will liberally mark through with red ink all the errors, or as many of the errors as I can find, unless it's really too many, and I'll just simply go correct the errors with a big red X to the entire reference page if it's just all screwed up. But if there's errors I can find. Now, a couple of things that you should know, and you should write these things down in your notes where you actually read your notes when you're writing. We never put, that I'm aware of, anywhere that I've ever read, a DOI in a references. So if the style manual says to do it, don't. It's not done. 2, If the source is available in hard copy, do not cite the website address where you can find it, such as available at JSTOR or accessed on certain day. Don't do that. I know you got it there. It's okay, no big deal. Don't do it. You only cite the website address for something that only exists on a website. If it is a scholarly journal that is published in hard copy, and almost all of them are, right? You cite just that hard copy source, period. Is everybody with me? Yeah.
What was the first thing you said about DOI?
Never include in the references any DOIs. I mean, I've just never seen them in a scholarly piece or even a good analytical piece ever. And maybe they're coming, but I've just never seen them. Okay, so let's not go there. Okay, is everybody with me on that? Okay, good. And also, we are not a mathematics department or science department. And most of you are not scientists or mathematicians. You will be social scientists, perhaps, but you'll be analysts or researchers or whatever. Okay, we do not use numerical numbering. So the bibliographic entries, the references, are not one and then, whatever, the name of the person, or two and then the next one. They are organized alphabetically. That's how we find them. So we don't look for a number in the text like 1, like they do in science, and we go in and we look for 1 in the references. We look for Bowen in the text, and we look for Bowen in the references, and they're alphabetically sorted. That's how we search, okay? Between the citations and the references. Okay, enough said on that. So, we need, from the literature, 3 causal variables, 3 hypotheses. And so I said we're going to look at the issue of how do we explain variation and vulnerability across the 196 states of the international system. So I'm going to look at the literature. I'm going to be all kinds of stuff there about what is going to be causal. And one of them would be, okay, they're highly connected to the web. So what's going to be said, what am I saying? They are what?
Highly connected to the web.
Well, that's the hypothesis. They are states that are highly connected to the web. So I use sort of a moniker for that, a shortened version, right? Comma. Then I keep looking and I go, okay, I keep looking and it's kind of like states that have a lot of internet use, right? So number 2, so the first one, they are states that are highly connected to the web, states that have a lot of internet use, comma, and now I need my third one. What's my third one? The third one I'm going to say is they have thin connectivity with the web. Total opposite from the first one. So, and in opposition to the first hypothesis, states that have thin connectivity with the web. Period. That paragraph is done. Paragraph 2. The first hypothesis argues that states that have a high amount of connectivity to the web are the most vulnerable. Citations. At least one. Who said that? This is why you need 20, because there can be 4, 5, 6 people who said that. Period. Now, this is the case because, what's the argument? That's the next sentence. I don't have it on the board, but it follows. What's the logic here? If they have a lot of connectivity, there's more opportunity to be attacked. And there's a higher likelihood. Got that? You're done. It doesn't take a huge, drawn-out paragraph, and you don't discuss each article. You discuss the hypothesis and cite the articles. And in order to help you, I am not going to allow you to include an author's name or a name or title of a book or the Merriam-Webster dictionary as a title anywhere in the proposal. If it's there, I will chop it out and cut you points for it. Why? Because I want you to get used to getting away from telling stories based on just stringing together, well, this guy said this, and then she said that, and then she said that. And no, there's a story they're telling together. What is it? Screw their individual stories. Got it? That's what we want to do. All right, has everybody got the second paragraph done? All right, so the third one, you could say the second hypothesis, but I like to change a little bit. Scholars, and who are they, supporting the second hypothesis, argue that the amount of internet use is what's more important rather than just high-level connectivity. Period. States may have high levels of connectivity, does not mean they necessarily have a high level of use. But the more use that they have, then they become more vulnerable because they're more susceptible to external attack. Period. Done. Paragraph 4. The third hypothesis stands in stark contrast to both of the previous. It argues that it is not states that have a lot of connectivity or a lot of interaction, it's precisely those that have the least connectivity. Citations, period, right? That's because it only takes the severing of that one or two connections to take out the entire country's connectivity. Countries that have multiple connectivity, on the other hand, have redundant capacity. They can route into the country through maybe hundreds of other routes. Period. Okay? Is everybody with me? Okay. I want you to just sit there for a minute, and I want you to actually think about what you're doing. Because that's going to be important, because you're going to have to do it. So I want you to sit there, look at your notes. I want you to take a couple minutes, and I want you to write in your notes what it is that you're understanding here, and then I'm going to ask you to ask me questions on what you don't understand. So take the time now. You're only going to get 3 shots at this. So the first shot has got to be a good one. If your notes are not well constructed, construct them better now. Put them where you need them. Mark it somehow. Whatever you do. questions? Yes?
So when you cite the person in your paragraphs after you state the hypothesis, you just put their idea in there and then have their citation in there? You don't mention their name, they don't mention?
Never in the
Okay.
text.
Okay,
In text is in parentheses, that's what the citations are. Don't use the name of the author, don't use the name of the book, don't use the name of the article, and don't ever say the Merriam-Webster dictionary or something like that.
okay.
In the actual narrative itself, don't say it. Okay? It will incentivize you, first of all, in most cases, it comes across as exceptionally mature, and so it's very difficult to manage it, right? And even if you do, and you're able to, which would be great, the problem will be is it will incentivize you then to engage in this sort of string of who said what. And that's what we don't want. Notice I have very short paragraphs here, focusing on what they all said together. That make sense? And if there had been any serious nuances, I'll show you that in a minute, we can deal with it, okay? With the same format. Yes?
In our actual literature review, are we gonna have to write, the first hypothesis argues that blank?
Totally.
Is this
I
example
want to
C
see
one?
it this way. And here's why, okay? So, and I'm doing this with the 591ers and seniors as well, okay? This format is very clunky in some sense. It's staccato, right? But you can't go wrong. You know what I'm saying? If you break away from it, you could go wrong. If you do break away from it, I will grade you. If you do it right, I'll give you the A. But if you don't do it right, I'm going to ask you why you didn't follow this format. Could have gotten an A because it's called workmanlike. It's a nice word, workmanlike. It means that it was done just perfectly, but there's no inspiration to it. Who gives a shit right now? You try to figure out how to do it. Forget the inspiration. Forget it. Does that make sense? I mean, let's be able to discover things that will be inspiring, but we have to figure out how to get there, and that's the process here. So that's what I'm trying to do. That's the method of my madness. Okay? All right. So I forewarned you it's going to be a deadly boring course. Here it is. But you're still here. Maybe I can get the other 10 of you to drop out finally. When we get down to 13 to 15, we'll change the course back to the way it should be. Otherwise, beatings will continue until morale improves. Of course, I'm just kidding, obviously. I've cut out the material that has not to do with this. When you have a larger class, it's much more difficult to get things across. It takes longer. Smaller classes can move much more quickly. Doesn't matter what the distribution, how many CD, F, or A students in there, doesn't matter. It's a size thing. So we're over about 10, ideally. That's fine, we've adjusted. We're cool with it, but there's material taken out, but this is not what we've taken out. This is what we're focused on, because this is the essential. Okay? Okay. But the cooler stuff is gone. Yeah, we got rid of all the cool shit. Yes.
We have the opportunity to turn in like multiple drafts. In
Three.
between, 3 of them.
You
In
get the
between-
first one and then 2 at your leisure up to the date.
Will we have feedback on those in
Oh,
between turning in the next one?
oh, yeah, they come back blood red. Yeah. And what will happen is, okay, so the easiest papers to grade are an A and an F. There's not much to say in an A other than wow, and there isn't much to say other than F other than wow. So, I mean, it's the same word, right? I mean, it's wow, I'm impressed. I mean, you know, sort of like, wow, okay. So, I mean, so it's like when I tell a research question, I mean, if you can't give me a research question, you start with an F. So I don't grade past that, you know, there's nothing to say, because we didn't have a research question, right? So, well, I have to have something recognizable, so we do with this. So if you have something recognizable, you're not F. So the F is, okay, so like, you weren't there when I gave the lecture. You didn't spend the 5 minutes I just gave you to go through your notes, or you didn't bother to read them. Wow. Right? The A was, whoa, look at that, I don't have much to criticize here. Oh shit, wow. I had the oh shit because I loved it. No, I'm just kidding. So A and F are very simple. So A and F don't really have a lot of blood red to them. D has a little bit more blood red, but the basic problem with the D is, it's kind of there, but like a lot of things are in the wrong place and missing. So it's not a lot to correct, and things I will not correct will be grammar. What's the point of correcting your grammar if the entire paragraph and the entire thing is going to be rewritten? Because if you have a D, you need to write the whole thing and throw it out. Something's really wrong, right? When you get a C, you're still in the same place. There are really bigger issues and fish to fry other than grammar and clunky sentences styles and bad word choice and stuff like that. I start into that, and that's where it gets blood red when you get a B. So once you got like a C plus B minus and it heads up to an A, your paper looks like somebody bled on it. Like I gave it to my dog and it just, that dog was dying, red. But once you get above that red zone and you get into those A's, it got sort of the filter. Okay, so that's what it'll look like. That's what you can expect.
So that's.
And I have markings, I will show them to you when I give them back to you. And they say certain things are a problem, like you're meandering, you're stapling things together incoherently, you're missing a word, this is a very poor word choice, you need to rewrite this whole paragraph, I think you should just delete this whole thing. That's my favorite, big X, yeah.
So that's 3 times before the 25th.
Yes.
Okay.
First time is the day it's due, and then 2 after that of your choice.
Oh,
Okay, for each section.
okay.
So let's
Yeah.
So if we come to you during your office hours
Yes.
and you review it, does
Yes.
that count as one of those times?
Only if you ask me to grade it.
Would you give us feedback?
I normally do, and if I have time, I'll sit there and look at it and say, well, this is like, whatever, you want to take the grade or not?
So that you get to choose if that counts for your choice.
If I actually give you the option, because I actually could give you a grade at that point. Does that make sense? If I have the time, and we don't have like 25 people in the hall, I will try to actually grade it and give you the option. If we don't, then I will at least mark it up, but not grade it.
Got it,
And then you don't need a choice because you have a chance at it. Does that make sense? Okay. All right? Okay?
Oh.
Yes?
So, if the first time we turn it in is 25th, right? Is that the first time or is that the final date?
The first day you submit the literature review will be the 25th. The first day you submit the research question is October 2nd. The first day you submit the hypothesis and theory is October 9th. Then you may submit each of those 2 more times each up to November 15th.
Do you have any suggestions for us in regards to picking
Things to what?
topics, like picking a topic to write about?
Here I would say, pick a topic that's kind of interesting to you and see if it's, but be careful. Like, there's some topics that are really, really hot out there, and there's gonna be a lot of stuff, like same-sex marriage is gonna be huge, Hispanic voters, things are not gonna be huge, are gonna be things like success of the healthcare system, what works and doesn't work with the healthcare system. Those are the kinds of things that a couple of years ago people were hot on because of Obamacare. They're just really, they're full of words that are just so difficult to parse that it's impossible to get. Some really cool topics are emerging, anything to do with judicial politics. So anything to do with courts, like how do we explain if the Supreme Court or individual justices of the Supreme Court, how they're gonna vote on major issues related to, say, and you have to be major issue, not issue groups like abortion or business or civil rights. Another big sets of issues are always out there is anything to do with public policy. So anything to do with public views on trade-off between civil rights and security when it comes to terrorism would be one. There are those esoteric things out there that people don't find, but I throw them out there for you because I always have at least one student find them, and one comes up with a great one. So I got the student this year who's looking at the variation in seatbelt laws across the 50 states in the United States. Some seatbelt laws in buses, in school buses. Wow. Where to get that? This is such a cool issue, and it's like, whoa, people need to know this. This is where you're starting to get into really informing public policy. The other stuff, probably not. Another one, I had a guy a couple years back was going to be a dentist, and he was getting into the debate. How do you explain the variation across the counties of Nebraska in support or opposition to fluoridation? Whoa! Yeah, there we go. Do you suppose the legislature and the governor, wanted to know that? Yeah, they took that one in. Well, I just sent it to them and said, thank you. Because why? Because they're going to do something with it, which is actually important because we're going to talk about that in the research question section. We have to talk about why this is important to whom. Yeah. All right, and the answer is not concerned people everywhere. We don't care about concerned people anywhere. We're concerned with institutions, organizations, concerned groups, not chunks of people. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Would you say it's possible to have really strong writing that does well, even if you have kind of a bland topic?
Yeah. I'm not worried about brain topics right now. I'm worried that you don't get this. That's what I'm worried about. You understand? I want this to creep into your head. And as I had a graduate student who'd been with me 6 years, fabulously said, I woke up in the middle, I knew I was ready to graduate when I woke up in the middle of the night with nightmares of Dr. Clark's methodology presentations. And I just said, so I put him in class and he would teach to the 215ers. He'd just sit there, he'd be on autopilot. And that's, when I had a graduate program, that was what I would do with my graduate students. And that would be the proof. One of their rites of passage, not in addition to the thesis, they would have to teach 215, this class. And they would have to critique 591 papers, whole sets. And it was a really good learning experience for me, and it took a lot of work off me. And I had to backstop it. Okay. All right, so that's where we want to get. This needs to be like something, and will it be second nature by the time you're a senior? For the very successful of you, yes. For the less successful, the less it's internalized. The more you're still struggling with, still having a problem with a dependent variable. What's a variable, what's a constant? Yeah.
As far as articles and books go, would you say we should be looking last 5 years, last 10 years? Or does that matter?
Take a look at your topic. If you ask it, topics you should not ask about is what's the cause of democracy? Are you kidding me? That's so much written on that, you'll be here from Kingdom Come. What's the cause of war? What's the cause of conflict? Those are just huge, right? But you might ask, what you have to do is get a little bit more sorry, let's suppose you're interested in development. Well, maybe you were interested and you look at this and you start thinking about it, but then you refine it. Well, what development where? I want to explain variation in development across sub-Saharan Africa. Okay, now you got a question. That's going to be researchable. Why? Because sub-Saharan African is like a basket case, and people are really worried about that, concerned about it, want to do something about it. So there's a lot of good literature on that. It's very focused as compared to just poverty. Well, we got poverty here. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, there's things we can do something about, and things we can't. If the more focused we are, the more we can do something about it. Yeah.
I just had a question, when we're coming up, or writing down these hypotheses
Right.
in the literature review, I just would imagine that all the scholars won't have the exact same wording of their hypothesis.
No, they will not.
So where, do we kind of just create that wording and group them in, and then kind of explain
Yes,
that
the answer
by
is
citing
yes,
them?
but you get some help from the fact that they're writing about each other and they're classifying each other in relationship to themselves in their own literature reviews. A well-written scholarly article somewhere up front is going to have a literature review that you can see, they're calling this school this. Oh, that's where those guys are. And you piece it together as you kind of, and then you see what's going to work for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the last paragraph is what's going to be. Now, I pointed this as kind of like there's a debate here, right? So I could say, instead of what is missing in the literature is, I'm going to simply say, I enter this debate in the literature. So I change this sentence. I enter this debate in the literature. I hypothesize that is the cause of variation, or is the cause of the variation of vulnerability to cyber attack, right? Or cyber war. Now, let's suppose I look at this and I see there's something missing as opposed to that. Here I just chose one. I enter the debate and I hypothesize that it is, in fact, less connectivity is the source of higher vulnerability. Yeah? what if I look at this and I notice, and I just think about this, I step back a bit. Have a glass of wine or beer, only one. More than that, you're out. And I notice that connectivity kind of looks like this. You know? There's a group over here, there's a group over here, and there's kind of like this right here, and like this. Right? Well, in terms of most connected, that's here. Next is here. It's not a thin connection, well, that's here, but there's something else going on here. What's going on here is, this is not just thinly connected. This one is sort of like important for groups to talk to each other, groups of countries. It's kind of between, it's in between. It has nothing to do with how thinly connected it is. That's a part of it, but the real story is, it's gonna cut off one group of countries from connection with the other. That's gonna make it a likely target, I'm going to argue. I got a different argument. I entered the debate with a totally different hypothesis. See this? So I can either choose a hypothesis in the debate, or I can come up with an alternative here. Got it? But that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to establish there's debate and how I'm entering into that debate. What's my contribution? Questions? Everybody got it? That's the idea. That's what we're trying to do here. Questions? No questions? No hay preguntas. Preguntas será.
Okay.
Клаусима ира, вопросов не будет. Да? Хорошо, давай.
So,
Стефани, что ты хочешь, а? Что тебе хочется? Okay, go ahead.
so after our hypotheses, you know how we kind of explained why the other ones are relevant?
The what?
You know how like after we're like the first hypothesis argues blank, then we like explain why it's relevant.
No, not relevant. What we describe is more about it. It argues that countries that are the most connected are the most vulnerable. That is because there are more opportunities for them to be subjected at points to attack.
Okay, so then do we describe our hypotheses on the bottom if it's like a new one?
Yes, then what we do is I have a new one, so I enter this debate in literature, I hypothesize that, or I propose an alternative hypothesis. I hypothesize that, or what is missing in the literature is a focus on, or I will take up the position in debate and argue that, but you have to say something like that,
Okay.
and then spell it out. As what increases, vulnerability increases. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yep.
And you're done at that point. With this section. Yes?
Is there a good way to gauge, like, when you have your topic, is there like a good way to gauge, like, if you've gotten too specific or like too broad?
I wish there weren't. I mean, I wish there were, but life is kind of like, it's just like not really,
Okay.
until we sort of establish standards for like, in code and law. And so therefore, we know that it's a good roof because it's 3/4 plywood. Really? No, but we know that because it's code. Really? So thought gets us outside of codified things. There really are very few things in life that are really that straightforward, except for the 10 Commandments. Yeah, I wouldn't violate those. The rest of it, the code law, you can get 3/4, get away with a 1/4 plywood, maybe okay. Yes? No? But I leave another man's wife alone because that's a good way to get killed. Plus, it just seems to be wrong. Okay, all right, so there we go. But the 3/4 plywood, I don't think God's losing any sleep over. And that's most of everything that's going on, right? Right? But then there's that fuzzy one, right? You have gin and tonics, right? And you got one. Do you need the second one? You know. Don't tell me the next day. I don't want any excuses. All right? Okay. All right. So anyway, there you go. All right. But on the other one, another man's wife or another man's husband, forget it. No. Choice on the gin and tonic, no choice on that one. All right, so here we are. We have all this stuff, and we're there. Now we have a question, and we have a hypothesis. We're ready for the research question section. Are you ready? Here we go. Let's do this. All right, the literature review will be the longest section of your paper, and when you add the citations, or not citations, the reference pages, it's gonna be quite long. You have 20 references, you got at least 2 pages of references, and your literature review is probably gonna be in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 pages, something like that. Your research questions can be about a page to a page and a half, right? Your hypothesis theory, you'll be lucky to get a full page out of it. Okay, so you can get a sense for how long this is going to take. So let's start with the research question section, all right? All right, so. First sentence, there is variation in what? For example, something has, case 1 has x1, or not x1, y1. But case 2 has y2. It's the value of y. And those values are different, and they're quite a bit apart. We're doing is creating a frame. Far ends of the frame, the extremes of the frame. So let's suppose we take a well-worn question. There's variation in the quality of democracy across the international system. So what is the dependent variable? Quality of democracy, all right? What's my case? I said across the international system, what are my cases going to be? Countries. Has to be. So I'm going to measure quality across countries. So I need a data set that does that. So I could say, for example, Freedom House shows that Haiti has one of the lowest qualities of democracy at a score of 7. In contrast, or but, right, Germany has a score of 1 at the highest level. So what am I doing? I am showing there's variation. There is difference, there are differences. And I'm showing one extreme and the other. Be coherent here. Don't go with one extreme and then the other and then back to the other. No, just give me 2 or 3 or whatever on each end. Right? I could have said Haiti, Zimbabwe, and Ethiopia are scored at 7 by Freedom House at the low end of the democracy scale. On the other end of the democracy scale, at the highest level, score 1s are countries like Japan, whatever. Yeah? 2 or 3 examples. Get the idea here? All right. Now, what I've said is there's variation in y, and now I've demonstrated that there's variation in y. How do we explain the variation in y? Here's your question. Paragraph 1. All right? I include all C sub I, whatever that case is, in the analysis using data from 2016. What have I done? I've done what they call scoping. I have scoped the question temporally, time, and geographically, location. In this case, if the case is country, I'm including all countries in the analysis using data from 2016. What's the time frame I'm using? 2016. That's the temporal scoping. What's the geographic framing? All countries. If I use sub-Saharan Africa, what would be the geographic scoping? So I would say, I include all countries in sub-Saharan Africa in 2016 in the analysis. Make sense? All right, now, Y is defined as, do not quote, right, paraphrase, and if you need a citation, because you took it from someone else, even though you paraphrased it, cite the source. How do we, what is Y? Where is Y occurring? That's important to you. When is it occurring? That's what we're doing in this paragraph. Paragraph done. So, I have what we called in the first paragraph, frame the question. I framed it with the limits, yeah? And what I'm trying to do with framing it is I'm really trying to say there's variation on a variable here. Here, let me show it to you. Got it? Now why? Now let's say, well, here's what I mean by that variable. Here's the time frame I'm looking at, and here's a set of whatever. Right? So let's suppose that I had a public opinion poll. And I asked the question is, there's variation in white male support for same-sex marriage across the United States. A recent public opinion poll, because I'm not going to go, well, for example, John Doe, haha, look at Billy. No, I don't have them, right? So I'm going to have to play with this a bit differently. So I'm going to say, a recent public opinion poll demonstrates this variation, showing that among white males in the United States, all right, 42% support same-sex marriage and 48% oppose it. Right? How do we explain this variation? See what I did with the public opinion poll? I had to play with it to make it work for me. Yeah? All right, so now, I'm going to include, no, what I'm going to say in this case of the public opinion poll is, I used the public opinion poll on same-sex marriage conducted in 2015 by the Pew Research Center. Yeah? I define support for same-sex marriage as, or I define same-sex marriage as, right, a union, a legal union between two individuals of the same biological sex. That's the definition I use. All right? I will define support as those who would condone, independent of their evaluations of it, would condone or allow for such marriages to be conducted in law. Doesn't matter what their attitudes are to it. They would allow it to happen. Does that make sense? So it doesn't matter how you feel about it. It's whether or not you're willing to allow it to happen. Correct? Legally. That's what we're saying. So that's why I made the distinction. So that's what I do with the public opinion poll. You with me? How about, there's variation in legal requirements for seatbelt and retainers on school buses across the 50 states in the United States. For instance, Alabama and Mississippi require no seatbelts at all. In contrast, Massachusetts and Wyoming require not only a seatbelt, but a shoulder strap must be in place and used. How to explain the variation in the degree to which retainers are required, or seatbelts and retainers are required on school buses across the 50 states in the United States? And I don't know if that's the truth about those states. I have no idea. I'm going to find out. Okay? Now, the next one. All right. I include all 50 states in the analysis and the District of Columbia using the most recent law on school bus retainers. Right? I will include the following kinds of retainers in the analysis: seatbelts, shoulder straps, I don't know, leg harnesses, whatever, right? Right? There I got it. You with me? All right. What's the third paragraph? This is the paragraph where we come back to who cares. Now, if we were writing this, and if I were training you to be PhDs, which I'm not, we wouldn't care. The fact we don't know is enough. We don't have. What matters is that scholars are actually talking about this. That's what is the importance here. But you see, I'm not training you to be PhDs. I'm trying to give you training so that you can go out and become potentially research analysts. And there's huge, as I've made the case before, huge numbers of jobs there. In fact, I think the overwhelming numbers of jobs out there for an arts and science majors are just that. Unless you want to stand on a floor mat in Walmart, which is a cool job, by the way, because that's what I'm going to retire to. I was thinking about it the other day, I was thinking, gosh, that'd be a lot easier to do what I'm doing. So, getting ready for the Walmart. I am there. But I don't smile enough, you know, that's the problem. But I'm hoping that students walk in so I can snarl. You know? Be myself, right? All right. I don't think Walmart would pay me to be myself. So I'm probably not, I'm gonna have to stay here and just be an ass. Okay, so we get paid to be an ass here. All right, so what we do is we sit there and we go, all right, so we need to know who cares. And you have got to make the case. Now, how do you do that? The easiest way is just simply to show that this is a matter of public debate because there are organizations, formal organizations, that have a 501c3 tax exemption or are created by the state or government entities, but they are formal organizations, right, that have a horse in the race. Now let's think about this. These formal organizations are not concerned citizens everywhere. These formal organizations are not well-trained Jesuit students. They may be members of those formal organizations, but they are not formal organizations. So we don't talk about them. The other group we don't care about is political scientists. We don't give a shit about political scientists. We don't care if they do care. They are irrelevant. Remember that little ditty between a guy and a, yeah, they are irrelevant. Nobody cares. Which is not exactly true, but that's okay. Let's pretend it's true, because it makes us feel safer. Because if we unleash political scientists, we're screwed. Okay, so anyway, so here we are. So, who cares? Well, when it comes to like seatbelt retainers in school buses, do you suppose there are groups out there that might care? I imagine, I don't know, but you should be looking. I would imagine that there is some group like MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, but it's going to be Mothers for Seatbelt Retainers, right, on school buses. Something like that. You know what I'm saying? Got to be. Find them. They're your key. They're your audience. They're the ones you're writing this for. Because they can use this. To do what? Get states to use seat belts. Because you're asking, why is it some states do and some states don't? Right? You are their friend. You're giving them free research. There's nothing nonprofits like better than free. That's why they don't pay you. This is why if you want to be in the nonprofits the rest of your life, you will starve to death. But that's okay. And you won't get anything done, but you'll be happy. All right, so we're going to have groups out there. I mean, the obvious one is like, somebody might, I don't know, something to do with abortion, right? Well, NARAL, right? Concerned Women for America on the other side, right? Right to Life. How about National Organization for Women? There's your groups, Planned Parenthood. There they are. They're institutionalized formal entities. They have a horse in a race. They are in the public debate on these issues. How about the debate over okay? So how do we explain a variation of support for civil rights over security when it comes to terrorism? Okay? A recent public opinion poll showed that 36% of U.S. citizens would support civil rights over stricter controls in order to consider security. Another 42% would prefer security over civil rights. How do we explain this variation, right? Who's interested in that? ACLU? Duh. Taxpayer unions, maybe? Right? Who's interested here? Those are the folks you want to identify. If you take a look at issues that are related to the international system, how about the United Nations? I mean, if you want to know about who's interested in sub-Saharan poverty levels and trying to do something about it because they know what causes it, because you're going to tell them why these states have more and these have less. There's causality. That's what you're about, right? They're all about using your efforts to manipulate it to effect to get the right outcome. Well, who's first and foremost? United Nations, right? Who else? The World Bank. Who else? The IMF. That's what they're charged to do. They're not just charged with loaning money, they're charged with loaning money in such a way that increases world development. That's exactly what their charter says. Identify them. They're your audience. Yes?
Oh, no, I was
No.
just.
All right? So in this paragraph, the third paragraph is, there are a number of organizations and institutions interested in this question. Then you can name boom, boom, and boom, wish to decrease whatever you're looking at. Why? In contrast, or in opposition, are boom, boom, and boom, who wish to increase. Sometimes you can't find that. And that's fine. I mean, like, if we think about what's the cause of the number of terrorist events per year in the country, right? Who out there do we want to write for that would tell us or be interested in increasing number of terrorists? Okay, so let's not go there. You know what I'm talking about? Not really, you know. Yeah, so like, I mean, concerned fanatics in favor of killing people would love to have the answer to this. What? I don't really think so. Forget it, you know? Write them off. There's no such thing. Or we look at how is this variation in the level of totalitarianism across non-democratic states. So those entities that would really like to increase totalitarianism would be like, you know, Saddam Hussein's follow-on organization he left all his wealth to. Oh, come on. They're just not there. We don't have to go there, okay? All right. Now the last paragraph is a statement of your hypothesis. I argue that X causes Y. Okay? Or as X increases, Y decreases. Same thing. Right? And then I want a 1 or 2 sentence. This is logically to be expected because. All right, what's the logical expectation here? 1 sentence to it. That's it. Research question section. John. Frame the question. Scope it. Okay, first paragraph, frame it. Second paragraph, frame it and ask it. Second paragraph, scope it and define the dependent variable. Third question, tell me who's it important to. Fourth question, what's your answer? Why logically do you expect it to be the answer? Not empirical. I don't care if there's data out there. I want to know why logically it should follow. So if you want to know, how do we explain variation in pool drownings in Southern California? And your argument is that we know that the cause of this is the release of a Nicolas Cage movie. I want to hear your logical reasoning for that. Because Nicolas Cage is a werewolf who is...
He holds his breath underwater to
I mean,
transform.
if you've ever seen how much hair this guy's got in his back, you know he's a werewolf. I mean, so this is given. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, he's a werewolf. We know that. He needs, what's that stuff? You put that on your legs and all the hair comes off. He needs this on his nair. He needs that on his back. We need to call this back nair. Wow, okay. All right, but to see why, you know, all the women in Southern California want to kill themselves, because when the movies come out, they realize that this hunk of a guy they love so much has got that much hair, and they just kill themselves.
But why cool drowning?
I mean, that's what my daughter told me, because I was throwing this out, and she's, well, that's easy to understand, Dad. I go, God, 37-year-old woman, nailed it. Okay, got it. She nailed it. She nailed it. That's what she should have done, nailed it. All All right, how about tape? Let's put tape on. All right. All right, we're done.
Sorry,